Good morning, Gamecock fans. Welcome in to Coffee. Today is Thursday, March 6th, the year of our Lord 2025. Certainly very happy that all of you have elected to watch, listen, however you consume coffee, and join me this morning. Good night last night. Softball team won. I honestly, I didn't think I would be talking about softball, but I am, and that's fine. I'm happy to do it. They're still undefeated, and as fate would have it, I bet when they scheduled this out, they're like, let's give Oklahoma, South Carolina in the first series just so they can start, the Roman Empire of softball can feel good. But I think Ashley Chastain Woodard has other plans. That's going to be an interesting series. I'm not going to use the word measure. Maybe I will start saying measuring stick because I said that about the baseball series. I don't like to use measuring stick because Brad Scott, that was his excuse every time Tennessee, Florida, Clemson, the orange crush, if you will, for those that are young out there, Carolina and football, every year, the first, 10 years or so, maybe 12, they were in the SEC. The schedule every season at the end, games 9, 10, and 11, because you only played 11. It was Tennessee and then Florida and then Clemson. Back then, the Clemson game was actually the week before Thanksgiving. So Tennessee would come in Halloween weekend, and then you play the Gators and then the Tigers a lot of times. I'm trying to think in my mind. Maybe there was probably an open date between Tennessee and Florida too. But it was every year, man. And Tennessee and Florida were the class of the SEC East. Georgia was not at the level Georgia is. They were sort of up and down. They were that third team for sure, but they didn't win the East until 10 years. It was like '02, and the division started in '92. It was all Gators and then sometimes the Vols. And then you'd play Clemson. And so he would always say Tennessee, Florida. Not so much about Clemson because he was 2-3 against them, but measuring stick. And he just got sick of hearing it because it's almost like they were like, oh, well, we want the score to be close. And it rarely was. There were rarely very many close games with Tennessee or Florida when Brad Scott was the coach there. So I don't like to use that term. But then I said last week, measuring stick, I'm not going to use for the Clemson series. So maybe I will say this is a measuring stick for the softball team. Softball, baseball, superstitious sports. So let's flip it out. But certainly, I think a lot of my friends too. They're going to watch it. Softball is a good sport to watch, and so certainly remaining undefeated before you go out there is big. They won last night, and we'll see what happens. Baseball won last night as well, 9-1 down in Charleston. Later on the show, I need to find out who the play-by-play guy is that did it on ESPN Plus because he kind of sounds like Will Ferrell doing an impression of Harry Carey. I kind of like the style. These days you get a lot of whiny people doing broadcast, radio, whatever. I kind of like the style. So I need to find out who that guy was. I don't know that he was the most. I'm sure some found him annoying if you listen to it. A lot of people listen to the 107 or the Gamecock Network broadcast with our good friend Stewart, and then most of the time Derek wasn't on last night. But I listened to the ESPN Plus broadcast because I was doing some work and just had it up on my phone and just noticed that. I was like, and then they had two color analysts in the booth, and they just kind of said the same thing. That they kind of just copied each other. I sent a text to Phil, and it was like they sounded like they were parrots, like what? Seminole baseball, rock. Anyway, looked like a pretty good crowd at Joe Riley last night. It's always good to get down there and play in that stadium and that venue and in the great city of Charleston, I think. And, some good moments at the plate, I thought. And a 9-1 win is certainly nothing to shake a stick at. You had Davidson and Citadel, and then Morehead State comes in this weekend. And then it's Oklahoma, I'm pretty sure Oklahoma comes to South Carolina for the first SEC series ever for the Sooners and the opener this year. And hopefully they continue to make progress at the plate. That's going to be the key. I think starting pitching's looking pretty good and things like that, but hopefully they continue to progress in that way. You may have missed it last night or yesterday too, if you didn't listen to the show. Mike Morgan jumped in and kind of confirmed what we've been hearing about NIL and the basketball program, the men's basketball program here, and with revenue share coming, it's not a surprise. It's probably nothing that you haven't heard before, but that budget's going to increase. I'll continue to say I don't think NIL is the reason they're 2-15, staring down 2-16, and Tennessee lost last night, and so they're to Ole Miss, so they're going to be full of piss and vinegar up in Knoxville Saturday. But probably 2-16. And that's not why this team is that way. There's other things that have happened. We've gone through all those. We don't need to here, but and there was no discussion of, well, gosh, we really and look, and I can compare this because the offseason after 2022 in football, there were some guys Carolina couldn't afford that they wanted, and they got outbid, right? By schools like Kentucky and Arkansas. So, and Kentucky's always spent in football. Arkansas is gradually not. They've go look what Hunter Yurachek, their AD, has been saying about football NIL. But and that was tough. And in baseball, there were just guys they couldn't even call. I mean, it was no shot, And I know that budget's gone way up. Basketball, though, they were fine. They thought, they thought a lot. And I'm not saying people say, well, it's Lamont Paris misevaluating or what. That's more of a kind of a football thing. I just think there's guys on this team that didn't take the steps they needed to take and didn't play the way they were supposed to play. And then I think the point guard situation blew up in their face. If you want to know, I mean, it's just not that wasn't a solution for how Lamont Paris needs to win games. So I've said all that. But the good news is Mike's got really good contacts throughout the SEC and athletic departments and things like that. So I trust his information. He confirmed it. I've heard the same, but just wanted to let you know, men's basketball, it's going to be a lot more fun to talk about, I think, as we get into the off season. Not so much that they're going to go out and sign the Fab Five out of the portal, but I think anytime you have a year like this, the games become less and less fun, and you're just kind of waiting to get to the off season. And I'll say this too: a lot of times, a season like this will end in a coaching change, and so you're ready to go and find out who the new coach is and start over. In college sports now, it's going to take a lot to make a coaching change. Especially in big revenue sports where they have buyouts. It's not that Lamont Paris's buyout's egregious. It's 65% of the remaining contract, and it goes down every day. And that's standard at South Carolina, and that's better than a lot of places have it, if we're being honest with it. And I think that a lot of times when we're in the Gamecock bubble, we don't look around and kind of see, oh, wait a minute, this is a lot of money, and it is. But look at what these schools are paying out and all that. And money being a big topic now because of you're paying players, that kind of, I think with fans and folks like myself, you kind of mentally think it digs into the bottom line as far as roster and talent and recruiting and all that. It doesn't. But right now, with athletic departments having to, I think, come up with $20.5 million extra dollars because they spend and budget every penny they have. They're nonprofits, most of them. And so, with that happening, you have to kind of watch your budget right now. And LSU and Oklahoma in men's basketball are doing the same thing. Now, Oklahoma won last night, and they could get in the tournament under Parker Moser. Their non-conference plus the strength of the SEC could elevate them in. LSU's not going, and Matt McMahon has been there 3 years just like Lamont, and they haven't sniffed it. And LSU's got they're always up and down. They're either like really, really good, like Final Four good, or they're just bottom of the barrel. And they go up, they go down. They go up to LSU men's basketball, ladies and gentlemen. But coaches, and Matt McMahon started with 0 players, so you got to kind of, help him out there a little bit. But I think, they're going to do the same thing. That's Scott Woodward, the AD down there. He isn't afraid to fire somebody and go after Rick Pitino or whoever. That's kind of his MO. So they're going to infuse it because it's much cheaper to try to go, secure NIL dollars on top of rev share and things like that, because you're not talking about $10-15 million. And that's just not realistic these days. So, folks, get ready to not have a lot of coaching changes around the SEC. And you saw it in football this year, too. I mean, Sam Pittman probably gone at Arkansas. Billy Napier probably gone mid-season at Florida. I think they're probably glad they didn't do that now. Mark Stoops would have probably been gone. They can say all they want up there about, well, it's just a blip. I read where Kentucky football, literally, their AD said, it's a blip on the radar last year. I hope so for Kentucky fans. I don't have a problem with Kentucky fans, but I think it's run its course. I think there's a reason Mark Stoops wanted to go to Texas A&M. Resources. I think he's trying in the new era with the portal and is scraping together funds, but I mean there's a reason that job isn't that good. And oh, by the way, the native son and the alum John Summerall, is at Tulane winning after he won at Troy big and was up for all the few open jobs like North Carolina that were open last year. So you got a guy waiting in the wings. The entire fan base is ready to hire. And you got Stoops. So I don't know that that's a blip on the radar. So that's that there. But the point is, a lot of these dudes would have been gone this past year had we been in a different situation in football. And so men's basketball, I mean, there'll be some firings. Don't get me wrong. And unlike player rev share, boosters can write a check for that. So maybe there are some funds there. I just know that it's kind of the same story for SEC programs that have had difficult men's basketball seasons, and I also think everybody's pretty realistic about the fact that this is a historic year in the league. This has never happened before in the SEC. I don't see it happening again, especially when you consider that. I talked the other day about program team job. There are better jobs out there than Auburn and Alabama basketball. I don't know that Bruce Pearl's going to go anywhere, to be honest, because I think his son's on staff and he's happy. Nate Oates, I mean, I don't, Hubert Davis obviously is coming back to UNC next year by all accounts. They're going to hire a general manager. Good luck. In basketball, I don't know. Maybe that'll help, but and Hubert hadn't done that bad. It's just not up to their standard. But if North Carolina does open and they go outside of the family, I don't agree with Mike Morgan that says, "Oh, it's hard because Kentucky couldn't hire." North Carolina's different. You're talking about that job hasn't really been open in 75 years because they've never gone outside. I mean, they're still on the Frank McGuire tree. And again, those of you that are young, Frank McGuire coached for 16 years at South Carolina after his tenure at North Carolina, and his assistant Dean Smith took over for him. And that's a once in a lifetime opportunity. So my point is, some of these guys, I mean, they're already talking about Texas A&M, gobs of money, right? Money is no object at A&M. Buzz Williams' name's floating around out there for every potential opening there is, including Indiana. I mean, I think Buzz is a hell of a coach, but he didn't stay at Marquette very long, didn't stay at Virginia Tech. He's a Texas guy. I thought he was kind of home when he went to A&M, but some of these programs around the SEC, my point is, they're not going to stay up. They're going to go spend money and hire a good coach if their coach leaves, but it's not going to be like this. Darius Rucker, so it won't be like this for long. That's the truth. And I think most ADs realize that. So I didn't mean to get sidetracked on NIL basketball. Just wanted to drop that tidbit there for you. GamecockCoffee.com. Folks, it's been steady. Got to sell more of it, especially with this transfer portal period coming up in men's basketball. Because what happens is you have a set amount for rev share, and then on top of that, NIL dollars, and those NIL dollars will be facilitated through Garnet Trust, who I'm associated and affiliated with. Good people, Jeremy and Mark. You can't just rely on donations for Garnet Trust anymore, starting on the 1st of July. You have to raise it in other ways, memberships, fundraising sales like this, like Gamecock Coffee, uh, partnerships with businesses, sales partnerships, and things like that. In other words, like if you have a business, by the way, and you use credit card processing, and you'd like to support NIL and get a pretty good deal, from what I understand, on your credit card processing, shoot me an email to jcshurburtt@gmail.com, and I can hook you up with Garnet Trust, because we have a partner for that. And then every transaction that people make, there's a portion of it that gets kicked back in. There's a March Madness promotion we're going to have, where it's simply by downloading an app and signing up, money comes into Garnet Trust. But this Gamecock Coffee thing is kind of my baby. That's the reason I named the podcast Coffee way back when. I probably may have done it anyway, but so please, 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 GamecockCoffee.com. Spread the word to other people. Just about every day we get 2, 3, 4 in. And like I said, it's a long-term thing. We're not going to stop. It's not like we got a deadline like when you're selling wrapping paper at the school. Also want to quickly mention our other sponsor here on Coffee, Palmetto Golf and Belt. You know, this $150 woven belt or stitched belts with the Palmetto and Crescent, the Gamecock colors. They got that. They got excellent belts that with the cross on them, cross of Jesus, where you can display your faith in a subtle way by wearing a belt. Also have golf towels and tees, not t-shirts, but tees where you can tee off, golf accessories, and American freedom stuff. So I'm calling it faith, freedom, and forever to thee, baby. Palmetto Golf and Belt. Really good guy, Brandon. A man of faith, a man of Gamecock blood, and a great patriot, a great American, Brandon. So go to palmettogolfing.com and make your purchase today for the golfer in your life, or if you are a golfer. I know golf season's coming up for y'all, for y'all down in South Carolina. Going to be a little while for me up this way. Okay, so they released a new top 247, top 20, top 247. What do we call it? Top 247. And then everybody called the company 247 Sports. It was 24/7 Sports, but it's 247. Whatever. Hey, we made it. We got it. That's circa 2014 for yours truly. And a lot of Gamecock targets moved up. Probably the most significant one, we talked about it on the show yesterday, was Julian Walker, the son of Jamil Walker, from Dutch Fork. He's a big 6'6" defensive end. Devin Taylor mold a little bit. Really good film. A worthy player, I think, and a worthy ranking for him. But what happens is when 24/7 Sports updates, or when Rivals updates, although Rivals has a smaller percentage now, ESPN, and then On3, when they update the composite updates. And honestly, 24/7 Sports made a strategic decision to put their own rankings back out, or our own rankings back out. I don't like that. Because even when I was doing them, I was heading them up, and we made some great calls, man. There was some stuff where we were like, that should be front and center, because we had like my friend Jerry Hamilton, who's one of the best evaluators I've ever known. He had Johnny Manziel and Marcus Mariota in our top 247. Nobody else did. They were 3 stars per composite. And so there is time to go, hey, look at this. We're kind of cool, guy. But I think in general, composite gets cited more by media outlets. I think that you get more brand recognition. On3 now has the consensus, so that's a competitive thing. And I think it's in general more accurate, a lot more. because what you're doing when you're doing a composite ranking like that is you're taking the collective opinions of everybody. And the staffs for a national recruiting team, maybe six, maybe five. Those jobs are not what they once were. And then you have people that are on, stationed across the country on websites. And so, there's a lot better chance to get a player right if you take feedback. And I'm not talking about feedback in a meeting. That makes my head hurt. Believe me, I don't miss sitting through rankings meetings. But if you get that collective feedback, put it in an algorithm and spit it back out, then I think you have a chance to be more accurate because you have more eyeballs on a kid. And yeah, you may have 20 guys that see a player, and one may think mid 3-star, one may think five, but that gets it. That kind of gets you to the truth because, and the why we started, and I was in the meetings with Shannon Terry, and we came up with 24/7 composite. I'm not taking credit for it. I'll give that to Shannon, but I helped the process along. I mean, we said let's do this, and we did it. And if you look at it, it's there always is some inherent bias in everything when it comes to football players. In the NFL, look at what some people are saying about Shurburtt Sanders right now. Maybe some of it's deserved. I don't know. That's a different debate. I'd love to talk to Mike Morgan about that. We should have talked to Mike about that yesterday. Well, I have a list of things we should have gotten to with Mike on the show yesterday. Anyway, we'll get to that. But I mean, look what they say about. I mean, and then sometimes the feedback in the NFL is selfish. People are like, "Oh no, he's not very good," because they want to draft him. And I've seen this in recruiting too, where you have a team site guy and I'm not going to name the school, that downplays a player because he's worried that the big boys are going to come in and get him. So how do you account for that? Because when you're dealing with a small staff and you got these people across the country that you need help, hey, give me your honest opinion here. And you do it because you can't see everybody, especially back in the day before we had huddle. And film doesn't tell you everything. There's a lot of wrong heights and weights out there. And then they do things so damn early. You'll get a height and weight on a kid from a freshman. Nobody updates it. People think he's 143 pounds. That's crazy. But you account for that by putting it in a computer and spitting it out. I think computers, as much as sometimes they go cattywampus or did during the BCS era in college football, now with AI and everything else, I really believe that I kind of believe that would be a good way to go with teams too, because I think there's inherent bias. It is in everything. I mean, we're human. So that's why I like composite, and I've explained all that. But so you look through the South Carolina guys that the Gamecocks have targeted. I counted 15 that they have a realistic shot with. Realistic, like not like they're in active contact. There's official visits scheduled. They're not going to get all these guys, but and that's within the top 300 of the composite. So that's a good measuring stick. There's 5 in the top 100. There's 1 committed. So really there's 14 targets and 1 commitment. Or I'm sorry, I stand corrected. There's 2 committed. So 13 targets and 2 commitments. You look through the top 70. There's 5 guys. And what's a little scary about this in some way, I mean, there's South Carolina products on here. A lot of North Carolina, a lot of Virginia. I mean, North Carolina, I cannot emphasize this enough, folks. This is the year that I feel like not only do they have a shot to go in and got to kind of make new waves in that state, because it's been a while, make waves in that state. I think it's critical because a lot of the big time players, especially on the D line, are up in North Carolina. And it's a little scary because in recruiting, a lot of times, you try to get in an area and it's a gradual thing. It's not, or it's a one hit wonder. You go and a bunch of guys from here this year. Well, then you don't go back there It's kind of lean through the years. So that was, North Carolina under Spurrier. They had like one big class. And they consistently got players from up there, but that one big class, I mean, you're talking about Melvin Ingram and Travian Robertson and Chris Culliver and Wesley Saunders, all from the state of North Carolina all at once. So that was probably the last time. I thought Muschamp did a good job finding guys that could play, that were good players, out of North Carolina that were kind of maybe under the radar. And then I mentioned yesterday, North Carolina, and I've had two player personnel directors tell me this. The kids in North Carolina are different. There's usually one hot school, and it was North Carolina under Mac Brown. Now it's Tennessee. That kind of a hunk of them will gravitate toward. Then you have the rest of the top players because there's a lot of them because it's a state that's about to. I read Chris from Nana's Porch sent me an article yesterday. The state of North Carolina, 11.7 million people here pretty soon. That's a big state. I mean, you're going to be pushing almost 18, 19, one day 20 million people in the Carolinas. That's a lot. And so you look at it, and there's going to be players. There's population equals players, and so there's more. There's a lot more up there. So the top guys that aren't gravitating to a Tennessee or a UNC when Mac had it going there for a little bit, they're going to just be brand. Notre Dame will get some. Ohio State will get some. Georgia, Alabama. Clemson's kind of one of those outliers because they've always steadily recruited up there. But even Clemson's lost some guys that they normally would get from North Carolina during this era. It's kind of a hype train, just to be honest. And there have been some players that are really good, like Noah Rogers, wide receiver that's at NC State now, goes to Ohio State. Took the hype, swallowed the hype, the bag, whatever. Supposed to be really good. And we heard anything. I need to check his stats from NC State. I don't have Phil with me. So, I mean, and there's guys like that. Then there's guys that go off to others from North Carolina that go to the schools that are really good players. I think that if you're South Carolina right now, there's only a couple of, I think Rodney Durham, and I'll go through in the top 50, there's number 33, 24/7 Sports Composite, defensive end Rodney Dunham, not Durham, JC. Rodney Dunham. He is a player. I still believe Tennessee or South Carolina. He's visited South Carolina more than any other school. Hell's got a crystal ball in for him. A really special player. You got to listen to the Jaylen Brown interview on our YouTube page. It's a short. Jaylen Brown, who came over from the transfer portal from Missouri, said he's had a great relationship with Sterling Lucas since high school. Sterling Lucas is a great recruiter, and I'm glad they hired him. And I don't know that I disagreed with the premise that when it was between him and Christian Robinson for the job, that Robinson had a better recruiting track record. Sterling had never done it. But sometimes those guys that have never done it, they're hungry. And they get in there and they get after it. And Sterling certainly has. He's great at recruiting and a really good coach, too. Carolina's got a puncher's chance there. But Dunham's more of a hot school or local type. Aiden Harris, and he's number 30 now. And he's a D tackle, I think, from Weddington in Charlotte. These are Charlotte area kids, which Carolina, in a perfect world, folks, Carolina would get most of the in-state talent. They would get most of the Charlotte talent. They would get 2 or 3 blue chippers from the 757 in Virginia. They would get their normal 6 out of Georgia, and then a couple from Florida, and then a couple of really good players from Maryland, D.C., and be awesome. You could do it that way. And then you can go national or go west to Alabama, places like that, and fill needs. That's an aside. But Aiden Harris is from Charlotte. His brother's a recruit. Carolina's recruiting both hard. He's supposed to be back on campus this spring. Ohio State's in it. Auburn is a big factor with him. Ohio State has a crystal ball in for him, but that's old. So Aiden Harris, that's a D, guy that's going to go into a D tackle. If you want a player comparison, Taka Hemingway. Uh, there. I said it. I said it. Landon Duckworth's number 52. I don't think they're getting him. I've talked that to death. The top rated 24/7 Sports composite player that that's committed to South Carolina is Jazavian Currents. He's 53rd for 24/7 Sports, 68th per composite. I suspect he'll go up. And then back to wrap up the North Carolina thing. Just looking at those guys, there are other players in North Carolina. Carolina's not even recruiting that have big offer lists and things like that. Those are your national guys. And look, I'll say this: it's not unrealistic that South Carolina becomes a nationally relevant program. It would have been helpful to make the playoff last year, sure, but I think there's so much good that's happened uh, during the Beamer era. The Muschamp era, man, was just about like work and grind and look, there was a lot of good things. I mean, there's a lot of good foundational things that Will did when he was here, but it never paid off as far as relevancy. And Spurrier was kind of the show because and it was just because of who. It wasn't necessarily because that's some great coach or he was a great coach, but this is some. It wasn't necessarily because of his coaching. It's because of who he was. He transcended the sport a lot. Everybody just wanted to hear what he had to say. And he was winning, and it was a great story. And he put Carolina on TV a lot. You had all those Thursday night games for years. Heck, even his last season, 2015, they opened on a Thursday in Charlotte in the worst kickoff time decision ever. Who in the hell kicks off a college football game in August when it's 99 degrees in downtown Charlotte on a Thursday during rush hour? Anyway, I don't want to go back in time. I griped again. I said I wasn't going to gripe yesterday. I didn't make that promise today. Nevertheless, you needed relevancy. And how do you get relevancy is with Beamer. I think he's been really forward facing on social media, and that helps these days. Justin King obviously has done his job with his department. There's a lot of fun stuff out there that kind of goes viral, and that helps. I mean, that matters, especially to recruits. It may not be everybody's cup of tea. Some of it's not mine. I mean, some of it, to me, for my personal taste, but everybody has their own taste. It's kind of weird. Some of it got a little weird at times. Just a handful. I usually love them, but just a handful got weird. But look, hey, you got to reach everybody in media and social media these days. You want to reach everybody, and but all that aside, winning in big moments. We'll talk about this past season a lot and how special it was and how great it was to be in the playoff hunt and all that. But the end of 2022 was really awesome too. Like a lot of those guys that are in this 2024 class I talk about, that's when they were like, I got to come here. And the fans deserve a lot. The fans that show up to get that fill the stadium Saturday is who I'm talking about. Some of the fans on Twitter, I don't know. I don't know who those people are. But you deserve a pat on the back, Gamecock Nation, because that's elevated the program. Having game day here last year for LSU elevated the program. Being in the mix down the stretch, and so that at that point, once if you keep winning and having these big moments winning, and then you have all that other stuff in place, that's when you can start going out and hey, Johnny 5-star from wherever, come here. I don't think you ever deviate from your base here. In-state, Georgia, all that. I think that could get you in trouble getting greedy. I've seen programs as good as Florida State under Bobby Bowden make that mistake. But I think when you're talking about rounding out your class and things of that nature, if you keep this trajectory, I think those days will come. And like I mentioned, I sketched that out. Charlotte, 757, DC, South Carolina, Georgia, a couple from Florida and Alabama, maybe. Mobile. Mobile's a good place to hit for players. Just as an aside. You keep doing that, you can apply that plan and rock and roll. Still hit the portal like you do. So that's to put a bow on that North Carolina thing. Another North Carolina player, Samari Matthews, 71st in the country. It's still Clemson, Carolina. There's some other schools trying to sneak in there. 77 is a player from the Maryland, Loyola. Carrie Adams. I was told by some folks up in Maryland he's a big brand guy. So getting him on campus for a visit, I think, is cool. Of course, Sterling Lucas went after Zion Ely, the number 2 player in the country, who's committed to the Terps, and he's going to visit. And then he kind of shut it down. Who knows? Polo Anderson's another Clemson South Carolina battle. There's more of those this cycle than ever in 2026. He's from Dorman, 132nd in the country. He's from South Carolina. Number 136, a big, tall wide receiver, Travis Johnson, from the 757. He's Oscar Smith. My guy, Zion Giles from Carver's Bay, checks in. So he would be the number, per 24/7 Sports Composite, the number 3 player in the state. Big. He's a tackle. He's 6'5", 280 listed. A tackle. I love kids from places like Carver's Bay or Mullins or Johnsonville. Shout out to Lance Player. All that. Number 179 is a player I have a crystal ball in for. Wide receiver Ryan Mosley from Carrollton, Georgia. He's supposed to make some visits here pretty soon. Number 196, a guy I mentioned. And so he would be the number 1, 2, 3, 4th ranked player in the state. I'm doing this off a sheet of paper I hand wrote this on, so forgive me if I'm a little off. It's Julian Walker from Dutch Fork, 196. Wide receiver Gordon Sellers, another Charlotte player. South Carolina, Clemson, kind of up there, number 202. Number 232, another Gamecock commit, the second one out of these 15. Jamel House from Newberry. Now, 24/7 Sports doesn't have him all that high. I do. I'd like to see some junior tape. I need to kind of look. Sophomore tape, though, was enough for me. I think he's really, really good. 267 is a critical recruit. He's set an official visit from Durham, North Carolina. Defensive tackle Noah Clark, number 267. And that rounds out the guys in the top 300 per 24/7 Sports Composite. So to wrap up my point here, if South Carolina could get 7 of these guys, and you hope Noah Clark and Aiden Harris are 2, and Rodney Dunham are 3. Get some guys, get those players from North Carolina. It's for this class to be on paper. I say on paper because you may not get any of these guys and then go get better players. On paper, for this class to be, what it can be, they're going to have to break some barriers down in the state of North Carolina. And honestly, they already have started, because Donovan Darden and Brian Rowe, they were both, those guys kind of started in that NC State range. People want to know, how did NC State put 8 players in the NFL one year? It's because they recruit well in state on that next tier, the guys that are under the radar. And many times North Carolina players, the guys that are under the radar, Pharaoh Cooper, in that NC, I'll call it the NC State range, because they make a living there, end up being better than some of the blue chippers. It's just, I don't have any science to back that up, but I bet if I went down and went player for player, that would be true, because I've got a lot of busts in my mind from North Carolina, not even Gamecock related, and then a lot of players that went to state and ended up being really good, even East Carolina. That's the next tier, though. So, you look at it, Donovan Darden and Brian Rowe, they kind of started in that range. Rowe never, and I bet there's going to be some regrets about that. Rowe never climbed because there was no recruiting drama with him, at least forward facing. Georgia, I was told by 2-3 people, Georgia tried to flip him. Georgia loved him. So there you go. A power program trying to flip him. And so they recognized that. But he stuck with Carolina, and you see kind of the feedback you're getting. I don't know if you saw the dunk. That's basketball, it's not football, but you see that's a guy that's not 6'4", but that can jump up and get it. You get more and more excited about him the more you hear. And then Donovan Darden's the highest ranked player in the class at the end. At the beginning, he wasn't. Carolina beat NC State on him. So, that can kind of start things off, get things going when oh, well, these guys, they went to the Shrine Bowl. They were some of the best players in the state, whatever. That's okay. North Carolina kids are going there. And so, and you see it in the 757 now, too. I mentioned Travis Johnson. Well, Carolina got Fred Johnson, no relation from that area. And then they go back, they get Kendall Daniels from that area. They had, I think, they had somebody else committed or somebody was, but went elsewhere. And then now, you look at Travis Johnson. So the 757, which is Norfolk, it's the Virginia Beach, the Tidewater area. There's a lot, Hampton Roads. There's a ton of different names for that part of Virginia, but it's loaded with players. And the Maryland DC thing. I mean, Carolina had 9 players from Maryland DC on their roster. You could bet that Nick Harbor and Dylan Stewart had a lot to do with that. I also think Taylor Edwards had a lot to do with that too, because he came from Maryland and had relationships with these guys. So I think Carolina wants to keep it going up there. Keep landing. You got to keep landing players. You can't just you can't retreat from Northern Virginia and DC and Maryland. When I said retreat, like I had a Civil War analogy, but no, that's not it. Nevertheless, thank you for listening to Coffee today. Don't forget GamecockCoffee.com. Don't forget PalmettoGolfing.com, my 2 sponsors here. Bunch of love for them. Certainly going to be a good day on Inside the Gamecocks, the morning show and the show. Check those out later. We will have a JC and Morgan tomorrow morning. Dan Wetzel, the author of Death to the BCS, will join Mike Morgan and myself for a fantastic Friday on Chief Sports South Carolina. This has been Coffee. Appreciate all you guys and gals out there. Have a great day and holla at you soon.